Hey, hi, and hello, everyone. Welcome to the May edition of the Talent Table. So, before we get started, just wanted to throw out a few housekeeping things. If you look towards the bottom of your screen, you're going to see some widgets that you can use during the event. There is further related reading in the resources section. Feel free to ask us questions using the Q&A. I can't promise we're going to get to all of them, but we will do our best to look at them. We may answer it during the session. We may try to answer after the session as well in a follow-up message, a blog, a LinkedIn post, or maybe even another webinar. So throw your questions in the chat. In the Q&A. And then mark your calendar for our next Talent Table webinar, which is coming up in June, where we will talk about talking HR tech like a pro, connecting innovation and employees to business strategy. Alrighty, we have two fabulous guests today. We have Nihal from the Josh Bersin Company and Colin from the Huntsman's Corporation. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into the question of the month. So Nihal, we're going to go to you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. I am Nehal. I am based in India. I lead talent research here at the Josh Bersin Company. I've been in the HR research and consulting space for about 18 years now, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Yay!
Yep. And hello, everyone. I'm Colin Mitchell. I'm the talent acquisition leader for the Americas for Huntsman Corporation. Not aware of who Huntsman is. We're a global chemical manufacturing company, so we make specialty chemicals for the automotive, aerospace, and thousands of other different products that our chemicals go into. So excited to be here. My background is in manufacturing HR, so I probably bring a little bit different perspective. So very happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Love it. And that is why we bring different guests here, because we want those different perspectives. Rebecca Warren, I've been here at Eightfold for a little over 4 years now. Started out in customer success, moved on over to our talent transformation and strategy team. Prior to my roles here at Eightfold, I was in talent acquisition and HR in leadership roles for a long time in lots of different spaces. So I think we're going to have a fun chat. What I like to do is ask a question that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but kind of loosens us up and lets us have a little fun. So my question of the month today: is punctuation in texts passe, passive aggressive, or polite? So I don't know your texting habits and who you're texting or not. I know I have millennial children, and so I text them very differently than I do friends, coworkers, etc. So would love to hear what to you is the right way to text. Punctuation, not emojis. What do you do?
I think it's all about who you are texting. When I text candidates, it's in full sentences, and it feels weird, and I think it feels weird for them too.
I could have just sent this in an email.
Yeah, so I think a text is something short. I don't think the question marks or like the 10 exclamation points is just odd when people do it. So I think it's lost its stuff, and the emojis, they're okay. I think it takes extra time, so I think it's kind of out.
So you're kind of short and sweet, just get it out there, say the thing, be done with the thing.
Yes, I'm not all up to the acronyms. Sometimes I'm like, what is that? But yeah.
Okay.
All right, Nihal, what do you think?
I'd expected this to be a very skills AI intense question, so I had to think a little hard. I had to punctuate in my head to think of my answer. But I have to say, punctuation it's very profound. Like, it's really, really profound. So you need to understand your punctuations really well, because let me give you a case in point. If my husband, let's say, texts me that, honey, I'm going to hang out with my friends after work tonight. And if I say, okay, with an exclamation, trust me, it's okay. But if I say okay with a period, it's like okay. And he'd better cancel.
We're going to talk when you get home.
And yeah, just watch the kids. So it's very profound. I'd just say that if there's a masterclass on understanding your punctuations, you should sign up for it.
I love that. That is very true, right? The punctuation does make a difference, right? We all know that if it's all in caps, you're yelling at somebody, but there's a lot of other little things that you can put in there. I tend to use a lot of abbreviations. I tend to use the ellipses a lot, right? Like the dot, 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 like, and then just like have a whole bunch of random things all connected, because that just makes me feel like, I'm having an actual thought. But I do tend to use a lot of punctuation depending on who I'm talking to. But with my friends, it's lots of abbreviations, lots of emojis, all of that. Buck, who is joining us, has an opinion. Clarity is good, no emojis, very polite. So, okay. And Julia is polite as well. So I think it's interesting because there was a study that was out, which is what made me think of this, is that Gen Z feels like punctuation is rude, and it feels passive aggressive. It feels like you're trying to make that extra point, right? It's like the 10 exclamation points. And I love a good exclamation point. I love throwing in a couple extra just in case I need them in sentences down the road, right? So I use lots of exclamation points. But a lot of folks think that punctuation tends to make the text passive aggressive. Like you have to decode it, right? Like the period means we're fighting, and the smiley face means we're okay, and no punctuation at all means like I don't care, right? Like there's a lot of things that go into it. So there's some art and science in texting as well. But thanks for adding into that. I will make sure when I text you in the future, I am using the things that mean something to you, and I won't yell at any of you in text. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that. I always think it's fun just to ask a little kind of what's happening in your world and how are you thinking about things. So, okay. So let me kick us off here. Now, we've been talking about skills for a while now, and our conversation is moving past the why into the how. And a lot of folks are asking what's next. So AI evolving so quickly, right? AI is the slowest that it's ever been today, and it will never be this slow again. Business needs are shifting just as fast. Those of us in the talent space really have an opportunity to rethink how we work. So today's session is about breaking down silos, building stronger connections, and applying that same skills first mindset that we're thinking externally to ourselves and to our own growth. So, we ready to kick this off, y'all?
We're ready.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to throw a question out there, and this isn't directed to anybody in particular. So let's just have a conversation. So I want to talk about how you all have seen functional silos affect your ability to get work done, and also does it affect your ability to respond to what's happening in the business? So let's just talk about functional silos and how you've seen them. I don't know that I could ever say that I've seen them be like super awesome. We love functional silos. So I'm not trying to, lead the witness here, but let's talk about your opinion on functional silos and what you've seen them do to work in your organizations.
Yeah, so I'll start. So when we look at functional silos for us, right, I think we all are going towards one goal, right? And that's to help the business, whatever piece you play in that. And so we all have a role that our teams have in that. So I think when you think about your functional silos, you're thinking about how are we going to achieve that goal and ultimately achieve the overall goals. But I don't know of any function that doesn't work with another function too, right? So every function is going to play a piece in your overall achievement, as well as you're going to play a piece in someone else's achievement, right? So if we're thinking about talent acquisition, we're thinking about the business. Ultimately, we have to fill the roles with the right people to make them successful. If we're thinking about talent management and their overall goals, talent acquisition has to give them the right data and feed the right data for them to make the right decisions and skill-based. So between those two, that's just one example of how we each play into each other's silos. I don't think operationally, I've not seen a company be very successful when you are working in silos or a function be that. So I think you have to break those down and work cross-functionally.
Yeah, because what you're saying, when you think about silos, and what you said is right. I mean, that's aspirational, right? That we should all work together and join hands and cross the bridge and, go into happy dances. I think though it's the work gets done sometimes in an informal way, but those silos sometimes still stay at the top of each department. So I think what you're saying is right. I wonder if everybody is looking at it the same way as you are. So Nihal, I don't know what are your thoughts?
I think Colin hits the nail on its head. Every function plays a part in each function's success, but the unfortunate truth is every organization is stuck in these functional barriers and silos. It happens in most organizations. It happens across functions. It happens within HR functions. And to double click on what Colin said, I love using the orchestra analogy. So imagine a world-class orchestra. You have these super talented violinists, percussionists, brass players, but if they don't play in harmony, they play without coordination. The result is not music, it's noise. And that is exactly what happens when business functions or HR functions operate in silos, which is, without coordination, business performance suffers. And, when they talk to each other, when they operate in coordination, they hold the promise of creating extraordinary impact. And it is indeed important for organizations to break past these silos, because not doing so, it comes with a huge cost. I'll give you some specific examples. In our world of work, it's not unheard of. We do come across organizations where, within the same organization, one part of the business is laying off people aggressively, and another part of the same organization is struggling to hire talent, whereas you could probably tap into adjacent skills and reskill some of the talent you're laying off and move them into the roles where you're struggling to hire. It's painful. We hear people say that, it's easier to find a job outside an organization than inside an organization. People find it easier to quit an organization and join back an organization because functions just don't talk to each other. So these functional silos create barriers that come in the way of everything, reskilling, redeploying, and even recruiting talent effectively.
Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit. So if we think about, as Colin said, right, work happens in a lot of ways in departments, right? We're structured in departments. That's for good, bad, or worse. That's how it is, right? We have departments and we have reporting structures, and so work needs to happen and kind of be organized that way. And we also know that work doesn't happen in silos, right? Work goes across. So here's a two-part question. So we think about that. Like, what do you think are the biggest barriers to cross-functional collaboration, right? Like, is it talent hoarding? Is it people not feeling confident in their job and or is it they don't want people to think they don't know what they're doing, so they want to keep it? Like, I'm just making stuff up. I don't know if any of those are right. But first of all, what do you think is causing some of that, those barriers to cross-functional collaboration? And then what do we do to knock those down? And like, how can we practically in HR, TA, in the people space, what can we do to help those conversations? So first of all, what do you think is causing the barrier? And then what do you think we can do to knock that down?
There are just lots and lots and lots of barriers, which is why when we talk about, all these silos, I think even within an organization, there are so many different things and variables that need to act together to create that unified system. I'm sure there are lots of things we can talk about, but one that immediately comes to mind is reward systems and incentives. They're often misaligned. So do they reward individual performance or do they reward team performance? Do they incentivize retaining talent within your organization or hoarding talent within your function? Do they penalize you for it, or do they incentivize you for supporting career mobility, moving people around across the organization? So that is one. And again, the way to mitigate that is create that enterprise thinking. It's always a double-edged sword. People want to give their team the opportunity to move around in the organization, but every time someone leaves your team, you're dinged for it. So that's one very, very big blocker. And, to name a couple more, and then, I'm sure Colin has a lot to add. There's just many more. Culture is a very big piece. Does your culture encourage teamwork? And if it doesn't, it will definitely stifle innovation. If systems and processes are not integrated, it's impossible to identify intersection points where employees and leaders can benefit from working together. So those are a few. I'm sure there are lots we can add to that.
Colin, what do you think?
And to add on that, I think, each department has such pressure on them to hit their certain KPIs and hit their achievement goals. And sometimes those aren't always aligned with the other departments or the business's goals, right? So there's such a pressure for me to hit my goals, and I've got my team maxed out. I don't have any availability with my team to help other teams, right? I basically pressured my team to hit my goals. And I think one of the things we can break down there is really celebrating success with other teams as, finance hits their goals, but who all played a part in that, right? IT hits their goals, the business hits their goals. How are we celebrating everyone that took part in that, not just the business, right? And I think that's one of the pieces I see missing a lot in a lot of organizations is that celebration of success. I think also it's the communication. Sometimes there's breakdowns. I know what's happening in my department. I know generally what's happening in HR. I don't know what finance's goals are for the year, right? And I don't need to know every specific one, but I need to know the high level and how we play a piece in that too, right? How are, our business's goals? How do we play a part? How do we help? And I think breaking that down and understanding what my role is and what each department role is in the overall success of the organization really is going to help you understand that and help your teams understand that and probably break down some of that frustration that you feel.
Yeah. So I think all of the things you're saying are right. I wonder if we were to think about how do we take our egos out of a situation, right? We may have an answer and we may think like 100% this is the right answer. But what if we were to just say, hey, I'm going to throw this out to finance, sales, legal, whatever we're trying to solve for, and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think of that? I would love just to get your opinion. I appreciate your perspective. Am I thinking about this the right way? When I say we have to take our egos out, because if they say, no, that's the worst answer ever, we have to be okay to have that conversation, right? Like, oh my gosh, tell me where I went wrong, or tell me where you're thinking that we're misaligned. And then you can have those open conversations, right? So I think sometimes if we take our ego out, I will tell you honestly, like I have been in some roles where I have felt like it has been 100% my job to be the expert. There honestly was nobody else in the company who knew what I did or how I did it. And I took that pressure too much internally and said, I've got to do this myself, right? I don't want to let anybody know that I may have some questions and I want them to look at me as the expert. So sometimes it's hard to open up that door and say, I'm looking for your feedback. It's not that I'm not confident. It's not that I don't think I have the right answer, but it's always good to get other perspectives. So sometimes just taking that ego out and asking different departments like, hey, what do you think about this? Or if we were to move forward with this, how could this help your organization, right? Or help your department?
I'm going to add on to that. I really, really, really love that point. And it takes me back to a conversation we recently had. Ego stems out of vulnerability or the need to prove yourself. But when there is a solid connection, the need to do that kind of gets diluted anyway. I was talking to this organization very recently who actually moved from this 30-year-old, tiered service delivery model to a systemic talent model. And they were talking about how they started was just making a mandate of all these functional talent leaders having to come into the office the same day. So they said that, we talk about the functions need to talk to each other, but the humans at the top of each function need to first talk to each other. They need to build that connection where they're comfortable communicating and opening up and being in each other's space and not feeling intimidated. So I absolutely love that. And I think it totally aligns with this conversation I recently had, and some organizations are using that route to start working on it.
I like that.
And I think a big piece of that too is bringing the people in early in the conversation, right? Not at the end. At the end, was I really brought in to consult and bring in and try to help come to the decision? before it's already made. So I think I've found that, over the years that's a big piece of that as well.
Yeah, I love what you said about consulting. And Nihal, we had mentioned this earlier as well. If you look at it as a consultant perspective, right? Like I need to get all of these different opinions, ideas together. It makes it less contentious, or maybe it feels like less about somebody's calling my baby ugly and more about I just need to get more opinions, right? So like how do we ask for opinions in a good way, and maybe sometimes saying, like, hey, I appreciate that. I'm going to keep that for future. I'm not going to make my change now, so thank you for that input, but that's given me something to think about. I appreciate that. I love this, because I think what's really important for us as we think about, especially in our webinar today, is not just talking in theoreticals, but what have we seen? What do we think can work? How are we going to help other folks think differently, maybe about their roles, or if they're frustrated or kind of stuck in a space where like, I don't know how to get past this, some practical ideas on how they can do that. And I'm going to throw one more thing out here, and then I want to move on. One of the things that I did in my previous roles in talent acquisition was sometimes it's weird to get to know people. Like, I don't know how to do it, right? Like, I'm not just going to call up some random person in marketing and say, hey, can we have a chat? Like, maybe I should. I don't know. I just normally don't do that. But one of the things I did that actually worked really well. So join external clubs or groups that your company has, because you get to see people from different areas that you wouldn't normally. I've ended up in leadership of some of these clubs, and it gives you a chance to open up the door. Like, hey, when I was at General Mills, we had a newcomers club. And so it was for folks who had either recently joined the company or had moved to Minneapolis to be able to get connected, because they're like, we don't know anybody and we're new. And it was a great way for me to get to know people in different departments, different areas, different ways to help people connect. And another thing that I did too, and I know it's a little different now, but I started a softball team in 2 different companies that I worked with, and pulled people in from the entire organization. When you play sports together, it's a whole different world, I tell you. And you get to know a lot about people, but you also get to see leadership styles and maybe, have conversations that you wouldn't normally. And I have internally from folks that I play ball with, we're able to say, hey, I think you'd be a great fit in this job over here. So some other ways, if your organization has clubs or groups or things that you can join, whether it's in person or virtual, that might be another way to connect those dots and get to know other people in an informal way. And then you can have maybe some of those formal conversations that might help break down those barriers. All right, any thoughts before we move on to our next question? Okay. All right, here we go. So I want to talk about that skills first piece, right? We spent a lot of time talking about what organizations need, what individuals need, what skills or talents do folks have building those skills, but how often do we apply that skills first lens to our own careers? So I would love to hear how you both think about developing your skills and thinking about moving inside of your organization, or about the skills that you want to learn or things that you want to do. How are you applying that skills first lens that we talk about organizationally into your own lives? So Colin, tell me about your skills first journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's always a moving target, because the outside and external world is always changing, right? So it's good to understand a career path, but sometimes those career paths change, and that really kind of edits what your skill base and what you need to have it are. So I think a lot of that is the projects that I work on, going into things that may be uncomfortable, and then going in and understanding what successful people in those different roles are and what skills they have, right? And try to learn those different ones. Just being good at talent acquisition is great, but having just those skills really don't help me work cross-functionally, right? And I think that's kind of a theme we're working on here. But if I'm able to work cross-functionally and understand a bit of finance, a bit of IT, a bit of the business, and have that business acumen and all those sorts of things, maybe I'm not an expert in any of those pieces, right? I bring the expert into talent acquisition, but I can at least speak their language and understand those sorts of things. So I think it's understanding all those sorts of skills, and not just having a skill set that's defined of what your what your job is or what your career path is, but being able to expand on that and have a big talent or a big skills based pool. That way you can maneuver different areas in the organization.
Now, let me ask you a question before we go over to Nihal. So, did you come out of the womb saying, I want to be in TA? That is my goal. I know exactly what I need to know. I am going down the TA path.
You know, I don't think anyone does that. If they do that, I've never met that person yet, right? So, you know, you kind of find yourself in this job. I don't know anyone that comes out of the womb saying they're going to be in HR. Maybe there's a few of those people, right? I certainly wasn't one of those. So I think the skill base and the career has kind of led me towards that. And you know, being open, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is not having the blinders on and being open to what's out there for me, right? I think one of the great things Eightfold brings it, I know other pieces do too, is going out and seeing what jobs are out there, right? Mm-hmm. That job pops up and the AI says, I'm linked to it. I would have never thought maybe I'm going to be in compensation or sales, marketing. And that's a piece that brings you to open your mind up a little bit versus click, HR, what jobs are open? Nothing for me. Okay, I've got to look external. And I think that's how we can get some of that internal movement within the organization.
Yeah, and Nihal, I want to go to you next, but I love what you said, being open about your career path, not having, I mean, you can have an aspiration of saying, I think I want to be a CHRO, or maybe I want to be in this role, but being open to what comes. I love that. And one of the other things that you said was doing things that are hard or uncomfortable, taking yourself out of your comfort zone, because you never know what you're going to learn until you come out on the other side and you're like, oh my gosh, that was really hard, but I learned so much and now I'm in a different space. So I love those two things. Nihal, what do you think?
I think, you know, just echoing the keeping yourself open piece, what interests you, what excites you. The parallel thing to that is, to me personally, a skills first lens means prioritizing my skills over my experiences, always reminding myself that my experiences or the lack of those can limit my career possibilities, but skills can be learned and developed. And what I mean here is, you know, let's say if I have a math degree, I could think that, you know, I couldn't pursue this role in business because I don't have a business degree. But knowing that skills can be learned, skills can be transferable. Maybe there are these very unique skills that my skills in math can apply to business. I can identify patterns easily. I can see trends easily. I can have a more strategic or critical mindset. So knowing that my experiences don't limit me. So just because I've not done something before doesn't mean that I couldn't do it in the future. So knowing that, again, going back to Colin's point on being open, like, you know, if this is something that excites me, let me not think about, okay, what degrees or experiences did they have to get into this role where they are today, but just focusing on, oh, this person does something that really inspires me, or this is a role that really inspires me. And these are the skills that this individual has, and knowing that I can develop those skills, we can learn those skills.
I love that idea of skills over experience. Like, I think we talk about it, but I don't know that I've heard it explained quite that way. And I love that, because like I talk about my resume as a list of things I never want to do again, right? Like I've done them. So I don't, you know, Colin, you talk about what else can I do, right? Like not just say, oh, well, I'm in HR, so I guess my next role is in HR, right? Like I'm case in point, I was in talent acquisition and somebody had seen my skills. It was a former account representative that I worked with when I was in TA, and she came over to Eightfold and she's like, hey, I think you should come over here and work in customer success. I'm like, have you been drinking? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know customer success. I don't know tech. But because she was able to see those transferable skills, as you said, Colin, like uploading my information, like, yes, you would fit in TA and also in customer success. So, I mean, I started this whole journey being incredibly uncomfortable because I had no idea what I was doing. And I had that conversation saying, hey, if after 6 months I suck at this, you can just say, hey, it's time for you to go. No harm, no foul. And I may come after 6 months and saying, I suck at this and I need to do something different, right? So I think when you can look at what the skills are as opposed to saying my experience, you have a different conversation, right? And now my role, I was in customer success for a little over 3 years. I'm now in marketing under talent transformation and strategy. I did not come out of the womb saying, hey, I think I want to be in a tech company doing, marketing transformation and strategy. But leaving yourself open to those opportunities and thinking about the skills that you have and the things that you want to grow towards, instead of saying, oh, well, my background is in finance, I guess I'm going to always be in finance. I love that. Be open, make yourself uncomfortable, because that helps you learn, and putting skills over experience. Y'all, those were fabulous things. I'm taking notes.
Can I just say, I came out of the womb saying that one day when I grow up, I want to be on this podcast with Rebecca.
Neil, that is the best answer ever. I want to make sure producers can get a clip of that, and then we're going to use that for every single ad going forward. That is amazing. Okay. So let's talk about those pieces. In order for that to happen, we can do that for ourselves. We can think about how maybe we want to grow our career, how we want to be different. That doesn't necessarily mean that the organization is thinking the same way, right? We talked a little bit before about silos, about talent hoarding, about people maybe not feeling comfortable with change or opening up that uncomfortable door. So I want to think about, how can talent leaders create that culture of it's okay to ask questions, it's good to be a continuous learner, to break out of our silos, out of our boxes. So I want to hear your opinions on what should talent leaders be doing to create that culture where it is comfortable to have those conversations cross functionally, as well as say, hey, I might want to do something really different the next time, and getting that support.
Yeah. So I think from a talent management standpoint, it's all about how do we function those one-on-ones and drive those sort of conversations, right? I think the one-on-ones today, whether you're having with your manager or manager plus one, maybe they happen for some people once a year. They need to happen more often. And they don't need to be so much. There's a part of that has to be strategic and what's going on in your world today. But it's also a question of, hey, what's going, where do you want to go? What are you seeing out there? And that changes, right? As the organization changes, as you see different areas in your organization. So what are you learning today? What are you seeing out there? And then have a manager that's open and teach managers to be open to helping that employee grow and know what's out there, right? Normally the managers or directors are going to know what's coming down the pipeline, hopefully. And thinking about, what are the people that I have in my organization? Where do they fit into this? And hey, who's the first person in mind where I can stick them into this role? Not so much, I've got to go out and buy the talent, right? Who do I have today that I can develop? And I think we also have today where we have systems in place, or systems you can get that help those managers or those leaders do that. It used to be so much, you got to know your organization and maybe, 1 or 2 levels down, or who are my high potentials. But other than that, you didn't know what else you had out there, right? We have big organizations, and that's hard to do. And now we have systems that enable our leaders to think more skill-based and know more levels down of what they've got and how those people are developing. So I think it's kind of a combination of those things.
And it sounds like what you're saying too is shifting away from, again, looking at a job description or looking at a resume, and instead focusing on ability and interest and things that have been observed. We've seen you excel. Like, we had no idea when you joined this project that you were going to be able to do XYZ. This is amazing. So how do we look at the skills, what people bring to the table, what they exhibit, as opposed to saying, oh, well, the job description says this and you have this and it doesn't look like a match. I like that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things we do in TA is we get a job description. Everyone says, okay, go find me the person, right? We have to have an intake call. And they say, well, you have a job description. That's the job. Tell me about who you want, right? And that's that conversation that has to happen.
Yes, agree. Because the job description is just a laundry list of things that somebody somewhere put together, usually in comp. Like, I'm not giving comp a hard time, but it's their job to put it together. But then we have to create what that actually means and what that person is going to be able to do. And also, allow them to be able to succeed in the organization. We can't put so many rules and guidelines and expectations, right? Purple squirrel, multicolored unicorn, whatever you want to call them, and then set them up for failure because we've created such a narrow role for them. So, Nihal, what are your thoughts?
One, I love that you said that, it's the person you want, but it's what that person does, because what happens oftentimes is you just try to prototype that same person who left and fill that person in versus focusing on what were the unique skills that that person brought to the table. I'm going to zoom out a little and again, go back to your question, because I absolutely loved that question on, what is the role of leaders in creating that culture? I think the biggest piece is culture is always, role model from the top. You set the tone. If you want to set a culture of, development, continuous learning, self-reflection, you need to model it. You need to share mistakes. You need to celebrate. Colin, you made a point of, how these one-on-ones again set the tone very nicely for it. I was just recently reading this book, Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, and she was talking about how this very important leadership trait is not to, and leaders often have this innate thing to, come across as people who have a lot of knowledge and they know everything, and, they can always be your go-to source of truth. But I love the point she made that, to be a good leader, you don't have to be a know-it-all. You have to be a learn-it-all. Yeah. Like you have to. That hit me really hard. So you may never know it all, but, to be a good leader, you need to be that learn-it-all. And that's the tone you need to set with your team, that maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe this is as new for me. If things are changing for you, things are changing for everyone in this world, and we can always learn and we can learn it together. The other thing that I feel is really, really important is creating capacity. A lot of times we are just moving at like 300 miles an hour. You may give people access to everything, like all the Udemy's and Coursera, LinkedIn Learnings, and the free certifications and, tuition benefits. But if they don't have the capacity, it's not going to help with development anyway. So how do you create that downtime for people to really pause and do something different? And I think the gold standard example there is Google, right? So some of Google's biggest innovations came when they gave that 20% passion project downtime. So Gmail was invented when they gave their people 20% downtime to just do whatever they wanted to do with their time. Wow. Gmail was one of the outcomes. So when you create capacity, people can reflect, they can develop, and sometimes they can just create these amazing, amazing, innovative solutions for the team, for the organization.
Yeah, because what you're doing there, right, is you're switching from reactive, here's a list of tasks I have to do, to a proactive, I'm going to apply these things that I've learned. I've spent time, giving my brain space. And I'll tell you, there are some days when I'm like, my brain just needs a lot of space. Like I just have to walk away from the desk. And so when you give your brain a chance to learn, think differently, read something different, or listen to a podcast, or, watch a webinar or something, and give yourself that space to learn and think differently, that then flows through into your work. I love that where you said be a learn-it-all, because then that allows you to be proactive. And as you talked about too, about culture, if we don't set the culture, it's going to set itself. So continually modeling that behavior as well, especially as a leader, saying, I'm going to block it on my calendar. This is my learning time, and I'm going to do everything I can to actually make sure I do it. I am guilty a lot of times of saying, hey, I'm going to block that. And then I'm like, oh, but then I can get 7 tasks done because people think that I'm learning, right? So you actually have to do it, not just block it on your calendar, but actually do it. I think that makes a big difference when people see you, as you said, Nihal, modeling that behavior. And then also talking about it too, right? Like in your one-on-ones or in your team meetings, saying, hey, I learned this thing, or I did this thing that was really uncomfortable. Or even I had a leader who was great about this, where he has in the CHRO role has, this big scope, but he would come to me and say, hey, I'm kind of thinking about this. What do you think? And I was like, yo, you want my opinion? That's a big deal, right? So as a leader, asking for other people's opinions and sharing maybe something like, hey, I read this and I thought this would really apply to the things that you're thinking about or doing, right? That interaction, modeling the behavior of learning, but then also sharing, saying, hey, I want your input, I want your feedback. That tends to really develop those conversations, and maybe, again, take those things out of the silos. All right, so I am curious. So we're talking about what leaders can do now. We're talking about how do we model good behavior? How do we break down those silos? How do we increase communication? I would love to hear from you, and then we're going to move into some techie talk. I would love to hear what you think HR leaders and HR professionals should be thinking about in the next 3 to 5 years, right? So what capabilities, Nihal used that word, I love that word. What capabilities do you think talent professionals need to develop to stay competitive over the next 3 to 5 years? What are your thoughts?
I could talk about the techie stuff that we're going to get to after this question that you promised, but very intuitively, we could always talk about AI skills, tech skills. We could talk about workforce trends, analytics, prompt engineering, data science. But it's also important to know that all these hot skills will constantly keep changing. What I do want to talk about, let's think about what are the enduring skills that you will always need to stay competitive. Rather, what are the enduring skills that you will need to stay even relevant 3, 5, 10 years down your life and throughout your life? Curiosity, learning velocity, which is your willingness to learn new things quickly. The one that I feel is very, very important to me, because I'm big on that skills first lens, and then, just wanting to learn. And again, Colin, to your point of, finding some peace in being uncomfortable. I don't know why my husband always says why I put myself through that every now and then. But again, the point I'm coming to is the skill that I feel that we should all develop to stay relevant throughout our lives, especially in an AI intense world, is being forgiving and kind to yourself. It is a big one, because as technology keeps getting smarter, it can be very easy for us to get bogged down. There will be so many things that technology will be able to do better than us. So it's important to continue and remember and develop the capability to be forgiving and kind to yourself, and thinking of AI as an ally and not as your enemy. So that would be really important to, just keep going.
I love that. Colin, what do you think?
Yeah, so those are great points. I think for my teams and kind of where I see everything, it's that business acumen. I push my teams. We read something about our business every morning. To learn about the chemical industry or our competitors or the Wall Street Journal, whatever it is. I leave it open to them, but they have that. We watch every earnings call to know exactly what our business is doing. But I push that because I think kind of the rules of the road is, if you're in TA, you should know talent acquisition. You should know HR. You should know the law. Where you're going to add value is if you can understand the business and how, as a support function, you're going to support them. That's what gets you a seat at the table, not just be able to speak a lot of TA terms or HR terms or a bunch of walls, but how do you assist the business in what you do? And that's how you'll add value. So I think also, give me one.
Darn phone ringing in the middle of our webinar. What's happening? Don't they know how important this is?
I know, right? So I'm in the middle of a cabin in West Virginia. That's the only reason there's a landline somewhere. It's the only place I know that there's a landline. So forgive me for that.
One landline, that's it.
Right, one landline, right? So I do have one in my office, but it's disconnected. So, so anyways, and I think it's also value add to my team. So we're going to talk about a bunch of the tech and those sorts of things and that assist. I tell my team, you won't impress me with how many tasks you can get done in a day, how many resumes you get done, how many intakes you get done. you'll impress me with the value that you add to the business, right? And that's leveraging the tools. We're going to talk about AI. That's a great tool that helps you with that. But how do you add the value to the business? And for us, that's getting the right people in the door and the right skill sets. For other parts of the organization, that's going to mean something different. But
Yeah.
if you are focusing directly on task, I think we can all understand that those tasks are going away. That's the future. We're all seeing that, whether we like it or not. And it's going to add, how do we add value to the business overall? So those are the 2 points that I would add on there. And I think the kindness is a great point. I think that's something that gets lost in all the shuffle of everything in the day-to-day. So that was a great point you made.
I do. I love that idea of being kind to yourself, being forgiving. And Colin, what you were saying too, like you need to know what's happening in your team. You need to be aware of the business, and that's how you're going to bring in better people, right? I'm guessing, because this is how it was when I was leading teams too, in TA, was when they said, hey, are you part of that business? It's like, yes, I've done my job. I've learned enough to be dangerous to be able to share that, right? When you understand that broader implication, you're not just putting a butt in the seat, you're putting somebody who's going to add value to the organization. So understanding their goals, understanding what those things are important to them, right? So that continuous learning about TA, about HR, about the business, and about the world, that's what allows you to be successful, to bring in the right people, because you have that broader perspective and you're thinking about what the company needs, as opposed to just, I need to check a box and fill this position. So I'm going to throw just 2 things out there, and then we'll get to the techie stuff. I've been doing a lot of reading around the future back planning and about what's happening in the future. And and this is kind of that lead into the techie stuff, is that as things continue to change, and as I said earlier, right, this is the slowest AI has ever been and that will ever be. And so things are going to continue to accelerate. And as we think about, it used to be saying, hey, and I'm at Unleash right now in Vegas, and we were on a panel yesterday, and one of the panelists, we had talked about, somebody had said, like, what's your 10-year AI plan? And like, she laughed hysterically and was just like, that's not a thing. Like, there's nobody has a 10-year AI plan, right? Like, we're trying to figure out, what do we do in the next 6 months and what's going to change? But what we do have to do is we have to think about what we want our future to look like, and then back into that. And so one of the things is saying, we honestly have lost the idea of certainty, right? We can no longer be certain about what's happening, but what we can do in the moment is bring clarity. So I think that's really important. If we think about the skills that we have to learn, what can we focus on right now? What does that clarity look like? How are we thinking about what we need to do? We need to have an idea of where we want to go. But let's, instead of saying we know exactly what's going to happen, let's say we know what's going to happen right now and how we want to drive it and how we want to build it. And one of the other things that we've talked about and are thinking about is that dilemma flipping. How do we turn something that feels like a roadblock or something in the way? How do we turn that into a positive? How do we turn that into an opportunity? How do we think about that differently? Saying, okay, we're not going to go that way, but we've got to go this way, right? Like, there's a certain time in your head when you're like, okay, instead of just saying that's a roadblock and we're done, flipping it upside down, turning it sideways, taking a piece out of that, how do you move it forward? So thinking differently about things that get in the way, and also about expecting we're going to know all the answers. We're never going to have all the answers. And we are going to be uncomfortable probably for the rest of our lives, because things are changing so fast. We need to continue to keep our head in the game, but we also can't count on what we think is going to happen is actually going to happen. Does that make sense before I? Okay. So this has been great. I'm watching the time. I can't believe it's gone this fast. I say this every time. I sound like a broken record, but excuse me. Okay, so let's talk about the techie stuff, the AI opportunity, the strategic role of talent. What are some things we need to be thinking about? So I would love to hear from you about how can talent teams, and we've alluded to this, I think, throughout our conversation, how can talent teams use AI and skills intelligence to drive that business alignment and to increase its strategic influence? How do we use tech, AI, things we're learning to drive that alignment and to increase how work gets done?
Yeah, so I think you have to have a North Star and know where you're going with that.
Oh, amen.
And AI doesn't, and I think it's some of that communication around from your leaders to have the buy-in from AI. You don't have leadership buy-in from AI, it's not going to happen. And I think that's a journey as well. And I think you've got different variances across organizations on that. But I think it's understanding how does it fit into my model. Everyone's model is going to be different, right? So it's great to go out and view how other people are using AI, but that may not be how that fits into your North Star and how you're going to get there, right? So it's great to take those ideas, but you've got to make your own plan and how you're going to get there and what that means for your organization and your teams. And then also communication around that. I've seen a lot of AI rolled out in different organizations because it's a great thing, but it was never communicated effectively of how we use this, how is it going to aid us? And then I think always the question is, well, if you're using AI, what is your team going to do, right? Mm-hmm. And how do you answer that question, right? What is your team developing, moving away from those task-oriented and driving value? So I think if you can do all those things, that's a great start to that journey.
Yeah, Neha, what do you think?
I think so. The question is, how do we increase our strategic influence with these skills intelligence systems? I think the starting point is understanding the power of these skills intelligence systems, knowing what they're capable of. We've been fortunate enough to do a lot of work with Eightfold, and we know how powerful that impact could be. So for example, I think the biggest one is focusing on the right skills. So you get insights into what are the most important skills, or what are the ascending skills in the market for your industry? What are the declining skills in the market for your industry? Where do you need to focus your skill development efforts? So it really helps you focus on the skills that really matter. Another one is skill matching. Everyone talks about, and Colin, this would resonate with you. It's very hard to find the right talent, and skill matching is again a very big thing where, powered by these skills intelligence systems, you can have a lot of strategic impact. So they can tell you who in your organization has the skills you need that are a direct match to fill open positions, who has the adjacent skills that can easily be developed and transferred to fill those gaps internally rather than having to look outside for talent, or it will help you get that perspective on what are the adjacent skills that you could hire for if the skills you're looking for are not available in the market. So they equip you with a lot of insight into what are the skills that matter, what are the skills you can focus on, and you really need to understand the power to unleash the power and make an impact.
I'm frantically taking notes here. Y'all are saying just gems, dropping them here. So 100%, I think we have to have a North Star. We've got to know where the company is going, not just what I want to do. What's that North Star? How are we driving to it? And then love what you said about understanding the most important skills and then being able to match those to the role in order to make the difference in the organization. Because if you understand them, but you're not actually tying them to what the business needs, who cares, right? Okay, so let's, I want to talk about here. So we're talking about AI and the emphasis on skills and what that brings, understanding your talent, not through the lens of, how they tie to a job description or where they sit on an org chart, but what kind of things do people want to do? What do they bring to the table? What skills do they have that the business really needs? So in your experience, do you think that AI and the emphasis on skills is changing the way roles are defined or structured in your organization or in the companies that you work with? And if they aren't changing, do you think they should?
So I think I think it's a journey, right? And I think we've got, especially in heavy industry, we have managers that have been in the organizations for a long time and have been taught the job description is what the job does, and this is the role, and that is their mindset, right? and they've been doing it for a long time, and this is a change. And I've not seen a development plan on any manager to date that has learned skill-based performance and skill-based knowledge in anyone. I think that should be in every development plan for every manager, because that's the way we're going, right? So I think it's teaching managers to be able to use that, whether you have AI or not, and learning what that means today, and not just driving positions off job descriptions that change in 3 months, or probably sooner than that half the time anyway, right? So being able to manage your organizations with skills is something that managers will have to learn, and AI is going to help them develop that and make it easier on them to understand all those things, and can make it easier. But if you have managers that don't have that buy-in, it's never going to work anyway. It's all about that buy-in. So I think we're on a journey here at Huntsman to learn those, and we are starting that journey. And we're well on the road to that. AI has been a big piece of that, but it's also still developing managers to understand that. So I don't know any manufacturing company, at least that I've seen, that has that fully figured out. I think everyone's on that journey. But I think whoever can get there and lead that pathway forward will be very successful in what they do from a talent's perspective.
I love that. It's a journey. That's right.
I know we're almost at time. I'll just chime in very quickly. It is a journey. Every organization is thinking about it. They feel pressured. They feel fatigued to an extent. But from where we see it in our research, no organizations figured it out yet. Organizations are on the journey. Where most organizations are at, they're not at a state where they can redesign work at scale, but they are at a stage where they're doing it not at a job level, but at a task level. So AI is not ready to take on jobs yet, but AI is ready to take on tasks. So most organizations are rethinking and deconstructing. So this is a job. These are all the tasks. This is what AI can do. This is what humans can do. And this is the best way that human workers and digital workers can best work together. That's, I think, my perspective on where organizations are with job redesign.
Right. And starting at the task level instead of starting at blowing up all of the things. Like what is going to change with the tasks? How does that then tie to skills? And then how does that go into role design? Love it. Okay. As you said, we're coming up on time here. We've got 2 minutes left. So y'all get a chance to give advice to all of our attendees here. So if folks walk away from this webinar only doing one thing, what do you want that one thing to be? What should they do the second that they close their laptops and walk away from this webinar? Nihal, go ahead and start.
Always, always, always invite AI to the table.
Ooh.
AI may or may not be the right solution, but if you don't invite AI to the table, you will never know. Always factor in the plausibility of AI being a part of the solution, no matter what problem you're trying to solve.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Wrote that down. Colin, waiting for your nugget.
Yeah. Explore the art of the possible with AI. Research, and then take all of that research and think about how specifically that's going to help my organization and drive us, and what's my specific plan.
So what you both have said, which I think is amazing, is about not limiting yourself to what you know right now or what your organization does right now, right? You both have said, and we didn't talk about this ahead of time, so I had no idea what y'all were going to say, right? But inviting AI to the table, getting different perspectives, thinking about the art of the possible, what's coming, what's next. You both are talking about being that continuous learner, leaving yourself open for different ideas, different ways of doing things, even if you think that you've got the best answer ever, inviting other people and inviting tech to the table so we can continue to broaden what we're bringing to our organization. So Colin, you had said something which I think really hits home, like our job isn't to do our job. Our job is much broader than that, right? Like we need to execute, Nihal, as you said, on the tasks. but we are in our role because we bring something more than just being able to execute on tasks. So how do we continue to bring that value to the company, understand the North Star, and continue to drive to that, not get caught up in the silos or in the minutia of what's happening, but continue to have our idea on the bigger picture, right? Like, what is that art of the possible? What can AI help us do? What can tech help us do that we couldn't do yesterday that we maybe absolutely have to do tomorrow? So thank you both. This was amazing. Love the questions and the comments that are coming in. We are excited to be able to potentially incorporate those into a future webinar or into follow-up after here. So thank you for joining us. Don't forget to join next month's Talent Table, where we're going to be talking about HR tech, connecting innovation and employees to business strategy. Would love to give a round of applause to our wonderful guests, Nehal and Colin. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are signing off for the month of May. Peace out.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.